Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we've got a wonderful opportunity because we have a whole panel for men.
Yes.
That are fabulous, and we are going to be talking about men's journey through grief.
I'm excited about the show, Mom, because I think it's a show not only for guys, but it's a show for women that want to understand guys.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we have different kinds of losses, so this is going to appeal to a lot of people figuring out how to navigate this journey of loss. Well, before we get started, I want to tell you that my new book, Open to Love, The Secrets of Senior Dating, can be bought on Amazon now. My fiance and I wrote this book together after the loss of my partner, and if you've lost a partner and you're looking for love, this is the book to get, because we give you tips and tools of how we made our journey, how we met, and also how you can meet somebody, because there's lots of love to go around. We want to also remind you that 100% of the proceeds for the book go to
the Open to Hope Foundation,
with the mission of helping people find hope after loss. All right, Heidi, let's get started with our show.
Okay, Mom. So like you said, we're talking about men's journey through grief today, and we have 4 guests. So I'll start with the guest that's closest to us and introduce them going down. So Johnny Sirpilla is right here.
Hi, Johnny.
Hello.
He is a seasoned executive leader with a dynamic 30-year career. He's founder and CEO of Encourage, which is an LLC specializing in leadership development. Johnny is the author of the book, Life is Hard, But I'll Be Okay, which was inspired by the death of his triplets, and they were 2 sons and a daughter. He is a sought-after public speaker, and he will be a keynote speaker at the Compassionate Friends National Conference in July in New Orleans.
And we will be there, so we hope you'll join us.
Yes. Next to Johnny is Warren Kozak. Warren is an author and journalist. Hello, Warren.
Hello, and
Hi, Warren.
thank you for having me on.
Great to have you
With a
on.
great group of guys.
He has written for television's most respected news anchors, including Ted Koppel, Charles Gibson, Diane Sawyer, and Aaron Brown. He was an on-air reporter for NPR, and his writings have appeared in the Wall Street Journal and Washington Post, among others. Warren is the author of the book, Waving Goodbye, Life After Loss, which he wrote after his beloved wife, Lisa, died. Okay, and next to Warren is Jon Lefrandt. Got these out of order. Jon is founder and CEO of Elevia. Am I saying that correctly?
Elevia, yep.
Elevia, an industry-transforming text messaging service used by end-of-life businesses to better serve grieving families. Jon is also the founder of For Grief, a multi-platform initiative that offers direct access to the country's most preeminent grief professionals and authors through its numerous on-demand courses, live events, and For Grief Speakers Bureau. Jon personally experienced the emotional strain and health repercussions following his father's death and recognized the importance of providing assistance to those in similar situations. Welcome, Jon.
Thanks for having me.
And last but not least is Stephen Panus. Stephen is a publicist, sports agent, attorney, and motivational speaker. He's represented a Super Bowl champion, Indianapolis 500 winner, and international star tennis players, among others. He was president of the Jockeys Club's America's Best Racing brand, and he is the CEO of Twisted Hairs, a marketing and PR agency. He wrote the book Walk On after his 16-year-old son Jake was suddenly killed as a passenger in a reckless car crash. Welcome, Stephen.
It's nice to be here.
We have a dynamic group of men right
We
here.
do, and they're great, and I don't want to spend too much time on their stories. I want to ask you, you've kind of been around each other for a few minutes. Could you tell me what kind of commonality you're feeling? I think, Warren, you kind of felt some commonality with these guys.
I felt a very strong bond with all 3 gentlemen here immediately.
And talk about that as a male. What was it that bonded you?
Well, we share this experience, and it is a unique experience, and I think it's true. Guys don't talk about it that much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What, the rest of you have a comment?
Yeah, I think we're building off what Warren said, when everyone talks about their story, you could feel their pain, and it resonates right to the core of your spirit. We've all been there, and so it hits.
Yeah.
You know, I think that, meeting other men with loss, I don't know how you not talk about it. And all 4 of us are very comfortable doing that, and it's probably been part of our healing process and maybe a little bit of who we were before loss, but even better, who we became after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would say for me, where I lost my father, and I'm the oldest of 7 kids, I don't have any older brothers. I think looking at other great men and their examples, I think is really, really powerful for me. I always look for it, and when you see that and you can see their vulnerability and their openness and their desire to just help, it's a powerful thing.
Wow, that's a word for men, vulnerability. What
Yeah.
is that?
Well, I'm thinking,
Whoa.
you know, we wrote a book with Eric Hipple. You all know this, and he was an NFL quarterback called Real Men Do Cry. And he said one of the issues that he faced, and I'm curious about this, 'cause you're talking about vulnerability, is that he was given messages growing up of real men don't cry, you be a big boy, don't cry, walk it off, suck it up,
Right.
and, you know, be tough. And I'm wondering if you felt those, like when you had a loss, if those kind of things came up for you as guys.
For me, I say as a full-blooded Italian, we don't know how to feel, maybe, hold it down.
Yeah.
And so I was taught to express it. So
I love this.
I had that blessing, going into it, that there was nothing I needed to hold down and suppress.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe to the other end of I needed to rein it in a bit,
Yeah.
because maybe not everyone would be as comfortable with my need to express and share and continue to talk about it, including my wife, as others.
Interesting.
I like this. I like the cultural perspective. Okay, as someone Italian, that isn't my experience. So
Yeah.
what about the other?
I thought there was something wrong with me growing up. I never cried. When my parents died, I didn't cry. My grandmother I was very close to, I didn't cry. When Lisa died, when my wife died, I couldn't stop. And it hit me. I'd be on the subway. I'd be on the elliptical in the gym. I'd be at work. I became one of those creepy guys that wore sunglasses on the subway. I almost made up for all those years that I didn't. And then I would go swimming at our cottage in Wisconsin in the summer. And one day I'm doing a crawl and I start crying underwater. And that's a stupid idea. That, it doesn't work. And then I started to laugh over it, and that's even dumber. So,
Yeah, we should get into humor in a minute when we finish this topic, because that's good.
Yeah, for me, I was newly married when my dad passed away, and it was about 5 years until I got any kind of help from a therapist. And my wife comments often, she's like, I never ever saw you cry, which is really crazy now, because now I'm a flood of tears. It comes more often. I think that's been a healthy part of healing.
So you were saying that you got in touch with your feelings.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yeah, I think I had to put a wall up and a protection around me for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was raised, you get knocked down, you get back up again mentality. That doesn't apply to losing a 16-year-old son with no warning. I didn't just cry, I wept until my bones rattled. It was traumatic.
Right.
That's a good description, I think.
Yeah.
Weeping till your bones
Bones
rattled. I'm
rattled.
guessing all of you resonate with that.
I'm curious how everybody dealt with work. I mean, going back to work. What was that like?
For me, I went back, I'm sure as we all did, apprehensively. Maybe, sooner, it was a few weeks that I was off, sooner than we were ready to, but have the responsibility to and needed to get back for others and the people that we served. But for me, it became a mission that I was going to change the way I led. I was going to change the way I interacted, and really what my company was all about in our family business. And so I wanted to use it as an opportunity to honor my kids, but at the same time, it was really a survival technique, because I was noticing all these situations that didn't merit the high energy and emotion that people were putting to it, and it taught me how to lead differently, and that became my passion.
Okay. Yeah.
I think work saved my life in that first year. My daughter was away at school, and I just focused. My whole life was actually just work, and then I'd come home and think about my wife at night.
Right.
I will also say I didn't do my best work in that year.
Yep.
I don't think I was that good at it, and it took about a year to get back.
I know my husband said after his son was killed that he went to work. He just started a new business 2 weeks before he died, and he said he went for the first year. He went to work, and he was at work. I thought he was working, And he came home after about a year, and he said, I'm going to lose his business. He said, I don't really work at work, you know? So, you know, just going to work doesn't mean you're
Right.
functioning.
I mean, thank goodness he didn't lose it, but I remember him being worried he was going to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I tend to work my way through my emotions anyways, and so there was almost this urgency to get back to work. I was also 25 and newly married with a 10-month-old child, and so there was that pressure of I gotta just keep going, and I think it was helpful, but I also recognized really quickly that I did need a career change at some point because I wanted something that was purpose-driven and not just working for the sake of work, and that I think manifests itself pretty early on after my dad's death, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took 8 weeks off, and I was fortunate to have a supportive boss who understood. We met occasionally, and he could see where I was, which was traumatized, and I couldn't put a sentence together. And when I did show up, much like Warren, I was present physically, but I wasn't there. And I will say this, I think it's interesting that when children are born, we celebrate it and we give paid time off, 12 weeks. But when someone dies, 3 days maybe, I was
Yeah.
very grateful to have 8 weeks, and I needed every day of it. But I think I'd like to see a change in how we approach death that way, because it's important that people get the time they need to grieve properly.
Right. Yeah. I know there's a whole movement that keeps trying to get that to happen, but it doesn't seem to want to happen.
Yeah.
But I know there is a whole movement. So I wanted to talk about relationships. How did it change relationships in your family? Do you want to start? Well, anybody can, actually. Go ahead.
I guess the change for me was probably when I regained a purpose, and the change was that I just felt a lot more love. I was keyed in on relationships. There was, there was very little that mattered except family and relationships, and I realized I was under the perception that I controlled a lot before Jake died, and when Jake died, I realized I don't control anything. And so that simplified my life when I embraced how little I control, my attitude,
I love
my
that
effort.
it simplified your life.
Yeah.
To figure out that you can control stuff.
And knowing
that
that, okay, the only control is the attitude, because like you said, we have so little control over what happens.
Yeah. Absolutely.
For me, the relationships, I was trapped, I felt like, in between wanting to dive in and help my mom and the other 6 children. I felt like I needed to be this surrogate father figure, step in for anything that they needed. But then I also had a new family with my wife and my child. And so for sure, my wife felt like she's going to lose her husband to the family needs that are over there. And so it was this constant tug of war. And the relationship, I would say, was very complicated. Am I supposed to be a surrogate father, or am I a brother? Am I a husband? What father? What does that all look like? It was a lot at one time
Wow.
for me.
We had this small family, my wife, our daughter, me, and we were a wonderful, tight little unit. And when you lose a third of that, that's a big number.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, my daughter and I were looking at each other. I remember the first dinner. I don't know if this answers the question, but about a year and a half after my wife died, my daughter and I went on a trip. She had to be at a school program in England, and I had to be at work. So we traveled together for a little bit, and then she went off to England. And she asked me a question. She said one night at dinner, have you achieved the goals that you set for yourself when you were my age?
Wow,
And
what a great question.
It was and I couldn't answer it right away. But the next morning, I woke up, and when I met her for breakfast, I said, I thought about it, and I'm shocked at what I thought I wanted then. I was thinking, would I be famous? How much money would I make? I said, none of my professional goals are near the top of the list. What I'm most proud of is standing by your mother during her illness, being a faithful husband, and I hope a good father. I never would have thought of that when I was her age.
I love
That's
that.
beautiful.
Yeah.
It is.
That's beautiful. I think for us, the relationship blossomed more. If you will, it went down to such a low point in sorrow together that what kind of emerged, that phoenix that came out of that, was something deeper and more meaningful than we had before. And while you might say that's unfortunate that it would take that to create that, I don't know if it would. We'll never know. It's just that from that, we decided to just cling to each other. And then after that, I couldn't really think of things that would be that upsetting that my wife would do. And she gave me that same grace, because once you've seen your partner hurt so badly, you don't want to add to that in any way. And so for us, that's one of the blessings that came from it, is just, our souls were already entwined, and then it was just cemented together.
Right. Something you've lived through together that nobody else has. It's very powerful. Well, anybody can take this question. I want to ask you, what do you do to memorialize that person? How do you remember them, and what is your thought about remembering?
I'll jump in there, because we've had a great tradition that our son Bo, when he was 3, said that he wanted Nicholas, Mary, and Peter to come to his birthday party. And, we explained that they're going to be in our hearts and all those things, and he wasn't buying it. He just wanted them, he wanted them to come. He wanted his older brothers and sister there. And so he had the idea of sending his balloons from the party up to them.
Wow, I love it.
And so we did that day on his 3rd birthday, and then for Bella and for Stone, on their birthdays, we would do the same thing, and then on Nicholas, Mary, and Peter's birthday. And so over the years when we were together, the 5 of us would do it. And then as, they each went off to college, they would, on their own, get 2 blue and 1 pink balloon, and then we'd FaceTime, and we would do that together.
Oh, I love this.
And so the kids being together at school, doing that with, in Stone's case, his senior year, his fraternity brothers all around him, as Bo and Bella are in Chicago, and Susan and I are in Florida, and we're FaceTiming, and then there's all these young men behind him, supporting and sending positive thoughts up to his
amazing.
brothers and sisters. So we do that every year.
I love that, because your kids didn't physically know their siblings, but they're still honoring their memory. And what a great example to their peers.
That's what I was thinking, because so many people don't talk about those deaths or whatever. And,
I love that.
Great, yeah.
About 4 months after Lisa died, I was dealing with the paperwork of death, which is a whole other topic.
Yeah, my mother's been dealing with that for years.
I got really annoyed, and I wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal. And right before it went in, it became so important for me to have her picture in it too. And I prevailed on the editors, and they agreed. And it made, it was online when it came up, and there's her picture on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And I'm thinking, that meant so much to me. And then I also thought, oh, she is going to be so pissed off because I know I picked the wrong picture.
I love that.
That's good.
And what did you say in the op-ed? Was it there's just too much paperwork?
No, learn from my mistakes. I did some really stupid jackass things that, you can alleviate probate by just doing some very simple things, this, and also decide how you are going to be buried. Because you don't want to make that decision on that day. Do it beforehand and figure it out, or buried, however you want to do it. And interestingly, when I've raised this topic with baby boomer friends, everyone winces. They don't want to discuss it. And I said, trust me, you want to do this before you have to.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Get one thing done at least.
Yeah. Because it is a lot when you have a spouse die. It's incredible. Yeah.
For me, the way I've memorialized my father is definitely in the business solutions and organizations that I've been able to create. I dove into the funeral industry of all things. Definitely not what I grew up thinking that's what I wanted to do for profession, but I saw after my experience with loss with my father and the funeral planning process and everything that happened after or didn't happen after, I knew that I could use my talents, skills, abilities, and my personal experience to bring creativity and innovation to that profession. And so I've created several organizations, as was mentioned in my bios, but it amazes me. So last year, we do follow-up on behalf of the funeral home to the families. It's all via text message. And last year we followed up with 9% of all deaths in America and had over 3 million text messages come through our system. And so I haven't written a book like these guys have, but I always say, if I did, my title would be something like All These Things Can Work Together for Good. Right. Because I think you can take that tragic experience, but you can then amplify, and just like you're doing with Open to Hope, you can really bless people's lives. So,
yeah, Jake's way to live was to lift people up and spread joy. So as his father, I felt a responsibility to get him to South Carolina where he wanted to go to school. So we started a scholarship there, and then one in South Dakota for Native American children there, and we've awarded 6 scholarships in 3 years, and every time I do it, I've been present. I see the joy in their faces, and I see Jake in their faces, and it's been very meaningful, and it's allowed me to have a future with my son that I otherwise don't have.
Yeah. Well, your dad got quite a kick out of Open to Hope, didn't he?
Absolutely, yes. He was a big part of it.
Yeah, he was a big part of it, and my daughters work with me in it, so that's become quite a family project. I wanted to ask you, what was the most unhelpful thing somebody said to you?
I like that question. That's a good question, Mom.
God needed another angel.
That's what I was going to say.
Take your kid.
Yeah, I would say, we're only given what we can handle. I thought about it at the time. People don't know what to say, and so they sometimes just say words. And so to kind of give them some graces and allow them to do their best. But I don't know, that one didn't work for me, and I can think about it in other ways and maybe argue for it. It just, that one didn't hit me well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for your loss, but I know what you're going through. My dog died.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. We've heard that one.
You want to hear the best one I heard?
What?
That I really appreciated?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. You started on that. The best one.
About a month after, it was about a month after I started traveling again for work, and I was in Berlin, and the head of our European office, who I know very well, was there, and he had met my wife. He knew what happened, and he didn't say anything. And I thought, well, that's a little weird. And we were in this meeting, and then after everyone left, and it was just the two of us, he just turned to me and he said, "So, how are you today? Shitty or really shitty?" And
I love that.
that was perfect.
That was like my father. When he would find out that someone had had a loss and they were new, pretty new in it, he'd say, "Wow, you're going through hell. You must be." And they'd be like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" He goes, "I've been there." And then he would quote Winston Churchill and say, "If you're going through hell, keep on going."
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, for me it was definitely the just discussion of now he's your angel and you'll be able to feel him, and 15 years removed from that, I do believe both of those things. I think that's good intention, and I have felt him at periods, and I have faith in that. But right after the loss, that's when you feel the void kind of the greatest, and it's just really, really hard. But I think I'll take from you too, the best advice I got too was that the grave doesn't need to be the only place where you can memorialize somebody, because that continued to be a hard place for me. I would go back, and all the visuals of that day of the funeral were so potent every time I went. But we found, my dad was an avid skier, and we ski at Sundance in Utah. It's about 40 minutes from our home. And gosh, every time I'm on the chairlift, that is where the kids talk about Papa, and they see us skiing pictures and all those things. But I love that because it's taken the pressure off of the grave specifically, and I've been able to memorialize him and feel him and remember him in other places, the places that he taught us how to ski, and we get to live, his legacy on through that.
Warren, did you have any support?
I did. I had wonderful guy friends.
I was going to say, you're kind of in a men's world. You were in that business, TV business thing. Did they help you?
I have there is a group of guys that have been wonderful, but also based on what Johnny said earlier, they didn't have to say anything, but they just showed up.
Yeah.
and we get together for dinners, and it's just
Yeah, so you have that
yeah,
peer.
definitely.
that
Showing
peer
up
group.
is a big deal because
Yep.
sometimes after a loss, people avoid you.
Oh,
that's a whole
how about
other.
the supermarket where you go to get groceries and you're looking at somebody across and they run the other way?
Yeah.
My parents got a puppy so that people would stop running from us because they wanted to see the dog.
Exactly.
We had friends who came to our house for dinner. We saw them socially. I haven't heard from them yet. It's been
Wow.
what, 6.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the burial was in Wisconsin. It was 5 below, howling wind, and we expected to just go there for the burial outside, obviously. There were all these people, all of our neighbors, people I hadn't seen since high school. So, people did show up, and then some people disappeared.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I'm thinking, Mom, since we need to wrap up soon, if we can get really quick advice from everybody.
Yep. What would be your quick piece of advice?
For guys out there that are watching the show.
Yep.
I'd say feel it all. Acknowledge the feelings. If you can't identify what something feels like, search for it. Don't just bury it and talk about it, but definitely feel it.
Find help, talk about it.
For me, one thing that I did is I ran a marathon in my dad's running shoes. Just a few months after he passed away, when I was cleaning out my dad's closet, and so it was find something that just will give some purpose to the pain that you have experienced, and that will
meaning and
help dig you out of it.
Please tell me he had the same shoe size.
He did. It was serendipitous. It all worked out great. Yeah.
I would say accept that your vulnerability is your strength, and embrace that.
All right. Well, let me run down the line and tell us where we can find you and your book again, and where to find it, and whatever websites you guys have got.
JohnnySirpilla.com. My book is Life is Hard, but I'll be okay, and it's anywhere books are sold online.
Okay.
The book is Waving Goodbye, WarrenKozak.com.
Okay.
You can find my work at forgrief.com and also on Instagram at _grief.
All right.
And I'm at StephenPanus.com, and the book is Walk On.
All right. Thank you guys for being on the show today. It's been fabulous.
Thanks
Yeah.
for
Thanks for
having
having
us.
us. Thank you.
We want to thank everybody for joining us on this show today. And Heidi, and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.